Hi and welcome back. Our next company is IRLAB, a Swedish biotech company focused on the development of novel therapeutic approaches for people living with neurological diseases, with a focus on Parkinson's disease. And with us, we have here today Nicholas Waters, the Executive Vice President and Head of R&D. Nicholas, the word is yours.
Thank you very much, and thank you all for coming today and listening to this presentation. As Gonzalo indicated, we are focusing on Parkinson's disease at IRLAB Therapeutics. Just a brief look at the company as such. We are pioneering biology using our technology, the ISP, the integrative screening process. A modern strategy to discover new molecules to treat serious and complicated CNS diseases. We have a very focused strategy today with a very strong pipeline addressing Parkinson's disease, aspects of Parkinson's disease. Our pipeline has been validated in terms of deals and also in terms of clinical results that we have generated during the past few years. So we have today a quite broad and solid portfolio of candidates stretching from preclinical discovery, preclinical development to phase 2B studies at present. 5 programs running at the present time. And the organization is well educated, has a long history in the field, a lot of experience from working in the CNS discovery and development space. Parkinson's disease, a few words on that. Not obvious to everyone what this is actually, and the main cause of the symptoms of Parkinson's disease is a loss of neurons, and those neurons specifically produce dopamine in the brain. And that has a number of consequences for people losing their dopamine systems. One of the most important signaling substances in the brain, controlling emotions, thought processes, and above all, perhaps motor functions and movements. The reason for, or the underlying etiology behind Parkinson's disease is in general not known, not panned out properly yet, but there are a couple of factors which are known to be influencing the occurrence of or the diagnosis for Parkinson's disease. Age is the most important one. This is an aging disorder. And then there are environmental aspects as well, but also genetic factors come in a subset of Parkinson's patients. The symptoms are many, but the most well-known symptoms for Parkinson's disease is the shaking that you see initially when Parkinson breaks through. And then the slowness of movement, of course, the stiffness, and the balance problems that occur later on in the disease progression. For the 3 first parts of the cardinal symptoms here, there is a very nice treatment that was discovered in the 60s and introduced in the late 60s, early 70s to the market. That's levodopa. And that's the mainstay treatment still today. And levodopa is converted into dopamine in the brain and does some of the things that dopamine does when it's there naturally, but not everything. Then there are a number of other symptoms associated with Parkinson's disease. For instance, the facial masking, the dystonia, the drooling symptoms, which are complicating life for patients. And then we have the neuropsychiatric symptoms, such as hallucinations, psychosis-like symptoms. Apathy is a big problem in this disorder. Dementia, of course, this is a dementia disorder, like Alzheimer's. And then the speech and swallowing problems that comes with the later stages in Parkinson's. So this is a number of symptoms here which are not properly addressed for the patients. And today we see around 7-8 million patients have been diagnosed across the globe with Parkinson's disease. This will grow to up to 13-14 million in the next few decades. So this is a true pandemic. And there are a number of aspects of Parkinson's disease which is not properly addressed with current and today's treatments, such as impaired balance, such as the cognitive decline, which I mentioned, the motor complications which are introduced by the treatment, levodopa, and then the non-motor symptoms, of course, such as the neuropsychiatric symptoms like psychosis and the apathy. And we are addressing these problems, and we have used our discovery engine, which we call the ISP, or the integrative screening process. It's a phenotypic screening strategy where we use modern mathematics to inform ourselves of the results of experiments, but also to design new molecules, to test them in this system. And this has made us quite efficient in discovering novel treatments for, or novel molecules which have beneficial effects, addressing deficits known to occur in Parkinson's disease. So we built a pipeline which in principle addresses all the aspects of Parkinson's disease. If we start at the bottom here with the bradykinesia, the tremor, the cardinal symptoms of Parkinson's disease, which is today treated with levodopa. Levodopa has some shortcomings. I'll come back to that at the end of the presentation. Has some serious shortcomings, which we think we can address with our currently nominated or recently nominated candidate 1117, IRL 1117. This is supposed to become a once daily treatment for the base symptoms of Parkinson's disease. I'll come back to that. Then, as an ongoing program, phase 2B, we are looking at the dyskinesia, the motor fluctuations, and the psychosis with mesdopetam. And here we are currently involved in a collaboration with Ipsen, a French international biotech or company, focusing on neurology and rare diseases. And here we are looking at trying to optimize treatment with levodopa by preventing or blocking the occurrence of dyskinesias, but also of psychosis. We have quite recently published phase 2B data on this drug. Then further on in the development, the neuropsychiatric symptoms come in, and here we have developed a strategy represented by IRL 757, which addresses the apathy symptoms which occur in Parkinson's disease. And this is a common symptom across neurological disorder. So this is a molecule which has the potential to go outside Parkinson's disease. Today, there is no treatment for apathy available on the market. But there is a huge interest out there in getting treatments addressing this specific symptom. And higher up in or later on in the development of the disorder, the cognitive impairment sets in, and the first signs of dementia symptoms come. And here we are developing also a drug which enhances cognitive function and reverses the cognitive decline to some extent. And this is a program also in preclinical development right now, IRL 942. And last, but by no means least, we are looking at the balance problems that occur late in the late phases of PD. Balance and falls, which is also followed by the speech and swallowing complications. And here we have Peripemat, currently in phase 2B. And our slogan here is no more falls. We are addressing this as a falls treatment. I'll come back to that. Looking at the mesdopetam program, initially here, this is a dopamine D3 receptor antagonist. We discovered it using our phenotypic screening strategy, and early data supported moving this towards dyskinesia treatment and psychosis treatment. So we have potential for treating at least 2 of the major symptoms occurring in Parkinson's disease during levodopa treatment. We licensed this, the right to develop and commercialize this to Ipsen a few years back. And we have a collaboration with Ipsen on the program right now. Just showing the comprehensive development program we've constructed and run through now with this molecule. First of all the preclinical work, of course, indicating that this is an antidyskinetic drug and an antipsychotic-like properties. We took it into single ascending dose, multiple dosing in phase 1. Got some really nice safety and tolerability data there, but also the pharmacokinetics were investigated in those studies. After that, moving carefully, we moved into a small phase 1b study in Parkinson patients, which was conducted here in Sweden, together with expert clinics around the country. And we also there could find that the drug is well tolerated. We have a very good safety profile. We have efficacy on lids in that phase 1b study, although that was not the primary objective of the study. And of course, the pharmacokinetics were once again confirmed. Then went further into an international or a European trial in phase 2a, where we looked at motor function as the primary outcome measure in this study. And we found that we had a dose-dependent effect on dyskinesias. We have an adverse event profile similar to placebo in the phase 2a, and we could define the dose range for further exploration in phase 2b. And the phase 2b study was recently concluded, where we looked at motor function using a number of different scales, that is addressing dyskinesia primarily. And we found that we had an antidyskinetic effect. We didn't meet the primary endpoint in the study, but we have a clear antidyskinetic effect according to the regulatory preferred scale UDysRS. We have no impairment of normal function, motor function. We had for the first time, we saw a clear signal of reduced OFF. And OFF is a very complicating symptom for Parkinson patients. And most treatments for Parkinson are addressing OFF and OFF time. And here we see an effect on that endpoint as well in this trial. The safety and tolerability is really, really good. Once again, we could confirm it's similar to placebo. So we have 2 trials now showing a very beneficial safety and tolerability profile for the compound. And of course, the pharmacokinetics follows the predicted properties in this larger population of patients that we've studied now. So this makes out the comprehensive package, which we are now putting together and considering what to do next. And that is actually up to Ipsen to decide on what's the next step in this development and the development of mesdopetam. Pirepemat, our second clinical program. And this is a really important program. We are addressing here a problem which has been unsolved for decades for patients with Parkinson's disease. And we are looking at trying to improve balance by means of small molecule strategy. We have an ongoing randomized placebo-controlled study which is ongoing across countries in Europe right now. And we are expanding that. I'll come back to the recruitment status in that study. And to reduce falls is one of, if not the greatest, one of the greatest needs in Parkinson's disease. About half of all patients with the diagnosis fall recurrently. And that's up to a couple of times a week or even several times a day. And this, of course, has quite severe implications on quality of life and activities of daily living. So there is a quite substantial health economical benefit to gain with a treatment that can solve this problem. There is ample data out there indicating that the cost of treatment for one fall injury in this aged population is around $30,000. So one can clearly see there is a huge societal cost and a personal cost for the patients here, which if we can treat, we can reap some value from. Pirepemat is designed to treat balance, to improve balance and reduce falls. It acts by activating neuronal pathways in the cortical regions of the brain, which are hampered in Parkinson's disease, doing so by blocking 5-HT7 and alpha-2 receptors. And here we also outline the number of patients we see with the different types of recurrent falls or even have risk for falls. It's a quite substantial number of patients out there. And this is an untapped market. Also here, we have designed a quite comprehensive program to reach a decision point where we can move into pivotal trials later on. Once again, phase 1 SAD and MAD studies, well tolerated, good safety there, very good pharmacokinetic properties, or acceptable pharmacokinetic properties, I should say. Similar in phase 1 with the tablet formulation. We used capsules in the first study. We went to a tablet formulation for larger trials. Then the phase 2A study, which was an exploratory safety and tolerability study, revealed that we have effects on cognitive function, we have effects on falls. Looking at the scales rating the problem with falls in that trial, we saw around 50% reduction in the scoring of fall complications in fallers in that trial. We also had some neuropsychiatric signals here also relating to cognitive, as I said, cognitive function, but also apathy. Having seen those data, we designed a quite large study, phase 2B study, which we are now conducting across Europe. And this is an ongoing study. It's a dose-finding study, and I'll come to that like here. It's a dose-finding study where we're looking at 2 different dose levels of treatment. We are looking at TID treatment strategy over 12 weeks. Patients who are included, they need to have fallen at least 2 falls during the last 4 weeks before entering into the study. And I can tell you here that this inclusion criteria is not a complicating factor for recruiting patients at all. We have currently a plan to activate 39 to 40 sites across Europe. We are right now in the middle of February. We had activated around 29 sites. We are expanding into the Netherlands also now with further clinics there, where there are some really expert sites as well that will support this trial. And we expect to finalize patient recruitment during the fall this year, so we'll have the data during the spring of 24. And this is going to be a really interesting readout. This is a type of study that has not been performed before. No one has taken any falls drugs this far before. There are some academic studies ongoing with choline esterase inhibitors, that is drugs which are used to improve cognitive function in Parkinson's disease, to look at if there are any effects on balance and falls. There is an academic study in the UK ongoing right now. And we're looking forward to learning more about the results from that study, of course. But for a novel treatment strategy, this is a unique study. Then we have our preclinical programs, 757 to treat apathy, as I mentioned, 942 addressing cognitive function. And in both those areas, we have collected a lot of preclinical data supporting the indications that we are moving towards. We have also developed the CMC work, so we are producing a drug now for phase 1, and we are conducting the classical preclinical work to be able to submit for phase 1 studies at the end of this year for 757 and early 24 for 942. And the last program here, 1117, which we have devised as a once daily treatment for Parkinson's. Since we don't shy off from complicated problems relating to neurological disorders, we have in this program decided to try to develop full D1, D2 agonists, and that is to mimic the good effects of levodopa, but with a very, very long half-life. A drug that can be used once daily. Instead of today, patients are treated with up to 7-8 times a day with levodopa, leading to motor fluctuation, complications with the motor fluctuations. If we can prevent that with the once daily treatment, that would be a huge benefit for the basic treatment of Parkinson's disease. We hope to have this program phase 1 ready during 24. And here I've just listed some of the complications with today's D1, D2 agonists. There are basically two that are used. That's levodopa, which is converted to dopamine. And then there is one of the oldest drugs known to man, that's apomorphine, which is also used as a rescue medicine in Parkinson's disease through injection to activate motor function when patients go into off states. And here we are looking at the red curve here, if I may go here. Here's the classical variability in symptomatology or in symptom relief that you see with levodopa. It goes up and down. You have these fluctuations. And our ambition here with 1117 is to actually have a smooth efficacy over the 12 or 24-hour cycle, basically. And we have a number of candidates there, but we've selected 1117, and we have some backups in the cupboards as well in this program. And this is a program we believe a lot in right now. During the year, we will present more data on 1117, 942, and 757, of course. We are conducting the trial now with pirepemat, and we expect to have data in the spring, as I said, next year. And this is also a drug which could be indicated in dementia in Parkinson's disease. We'll see what the trial gives us in terms of cognitive endpoints as well. And then for mesdopetam, we have now completed the phase 2 program, and we are looking at next steps in this program. What should they be? How to design the final stages of development for mesdopetam? An interesting question, which we are dealing with. And then, of course, there will be some news flow during the coming year. If we look at the spring here, we will have phase 1 from the operational milestone perspective. We'll have 757 ready for phase 1. We'll have pirepemat completing recruitment this year. We will have 942 ready for phase 1 next year. We will have a capital markets day during the fall, it's planned. We'll have participation in medical congresses. We expect to be able to present the broth of data from the mesdopetam study at the Congress this year, and also in the publication, of course. And of course, we will continue to visit places like this at investor events during the year. I think I'll stop there, Gonzalo. We're just going back to the starting slide.
Sounds good. Nicolas, thank you very much for such a nice presentation. And now we have a few minutes for some questions. And I will start on the pirepemat study in falls.
Yes.
I mean, you mentioned that these patients fall a lot.
Yes.
It's sadly, I mean, how common is, I mean, the question is in two parts. Let's say the first one is how common is for these patients to actually fall? I mean, how many times do they fall, let's say, in a normal week? And second, how do you prevent for this, for example, these patients falling and then they break their hip, for example, or something like that, and they have to be in bed for 4 weeks, like the length of your trial? How do you prevent for this effect masking your results?
Yeah, that's a statistical question, and it's a complex question, but there is actually a guideline developed at IMA by experts at IMA dealing with what's called intercurrent events. And that is how you handle such events, that if you fall, you have an injury, you have to sit in a wheelchair or use a rollator, for instance, or in the bed. That has a certain effect on the statistics, which is not hampering the analysis. So that's taken care of. And going back to your first question, as I said before, these patients fall a lot and up to several times a week. So it's a real big problem, and this is half of the Parkinson population that has this problem.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And another question is in the other molecule, mesdopetam, in clinical development. You reported a few weeks ago your phase 2b top-line data,
Yes.
and you showed that in the UDSRS scale, you have a nice improvement, like statistically significant improvement.
Yes.
And I was wondering how, in terms of magnitude of the effects, what would be like something clinically relevant in that scale? We know that in diaries it's 1 hour more or less what you were expecting.
In the diaries, there is 1 hour of good on time is perceived as clinically relevant. When it comes to the UDSRS scale, there are a number of publications addressing these questions. But so on the total scale, I think it's around somewhere around 5-6 points. But this is a scale that's made up of 4 sections, and we are using only 3 of those based on advice from the FDA, actually 1, 3, and 4 in our trial. So we don't have the same breadth of the scale, but still we will publish the quantitative data soon enough. And some guidance can be collected actually for those who are really interested in this question, is to look at the approval for Gocovri in the US, the documentation around the approval for Gocovri, where they had, I think, around 7 points on the total scale, or 8 points on the total scale in one of their trials that was approved.
Very interesting. And now that if Ipsen decides to move forward mesdopetam into a phase 3 program, well, in general terms, usually the FDA requires to have 2 control trials, like scoring positive in primary endpoints.
Yes.
Could we assume that Ipsen would have to run 2 phase 3 trials there?
One should always assume that one should run 2 parallel phase 3 studies. There are exceptions, and some in neurology, actually, in small indications in neurology, where data from phase 2 can be supportive for 1 phase 2 trial. But one should always expect to run at least 2 parallel phase 3 studies. Yes.
And one last question, and it's on your new asset IRL 1117. You activate with this molecule D1 and D2 receptors. And how different is compared to levodopa? Let's say these new formulations that are coming with slow release. I mean, you mentioned the half-life of the product, but is there anything different mechanistically there?
What we've learned from the different formulations of levodopa is that they can be helpful in terms of stabilizing plasma concentrations. However, they usually end up with the same kind of complications as you do with common levodopa. So what we have been doing in the preclinical setting is to make sure that 1117 and its nearest neighbors, cousins, molecules do not inflict those complications, such as the fluctuations, such as dyskinesia, such as risk for psychosis, etc. So what we're trying to do here is to do a number of things at the same time. A long-acting effect, but without the complications over time.
Okay. Nicholas, thank you very much for being here today and for your nice presentation.
Yeah, thank you very much, and thank you for those who have been watching as well.